I've always felt like God's been close by to me. He was interested in me, and I could feel it from a young age. I could feel his call in my heart. I didn't exactly know what that call was, but I think eventually what it led me to was my Catholic faith and where I am today.
What is up, Impact Heroes? Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Rick Ornelas. Thank you for spending some time with us today because we know time's a valuable resource and we're going to make it worth your while. I appreciate each and every one of you, not just for listening, but for who you are. I know you're sparking change to make the world a better place every day, and I am humbled and grateful for your efforts. It takes all of us doing our part to spread positive change, and that's what this show is all about. Motivating you with stories of struggle, courage, and hope to empower you to make a difference in your life and the lives of others.
Are you interested in having Rick speak at your event or business? Here is what others have to say.
Did not know his story, and it was so inspirational, and his presence on stage, his authenticity was just incredible.
I absolutely loved his performance. It made me feel some type of way.
If you're looking for a speaker for your next event, hire Rick. I promise you this, you will not be disappointed.
Visit rickornelas.com to book him today.
Welcome back, Impact Heroes. Today we have the pleasure of speaking to our latest iSpark Change social impact hero, music and media expert with a passion for Jesus and the founder of Spirit Radio, Jacki Ascough. Jacki, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Rick. It's good to be here.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming on the show. I know I've been trying to get you to do one of these interviews for a while, and I know you're busy, but aside from that, I think that maybe there's some humility there in, as far as, you not wanting to be in the spotlight and not wanting to step forward as a social impact hero, but, maybe we'll dive into that a little bit.
It's a very big title.
It's a very big title. You're the first one to say that. And here's the thing about iSpark Change and about Social Impact Hero. We came up with that title, that big title, because we feel that the people that we spotlight, like yourself, are doing impactful work that impacts society, impacts humanity, and makes people better, impacts the world, makes the world better, impacts them in a positive way. Now, some people are a little scared off, I guess, by the title because they think that it's big, like you say, that, oh my gosh, that means I'm changing the world. But the way we look at it at iSpark Change is that every single one of us has the power to change the world on a daily basis. And that every single one of us can be a social impact hero on a daily basis. And that's why, if you noticed when I started the show just a minute ago, I said, welcome back, Impact Heroes, because we call our community Impact Heroes because they're all people that can make a difference and create an impact. So that's not to diminish you as a social impact hero. That's just to say that don't be scared off by the title. Okay, don't let it scare you away.
Okay.
So tell me the first question I like asking people is, we see you as someone who's spreading positive change through your actions. Like I said, we call you a social impact hero. But do you view yourself as a hero? How do you view yourself? How do you view your work and what you do?
Well, I suppose I view myself as a very busy person. It takes a team to make things like this happen. And I was just one member of a team that helped to bring Spirit Radio to what it is today. And, I happened to be around from the beginning and I'm still involved. Not everybody that started the project back 16, 17 years ago is still involved in the project, but a few of us are. And it is just, it is a big project. And I don't think like when I got involved that I had any idea. I really had no idea that I would still be involved this long after, because when I got involved, I thought it was like a 6-month commitment, and I just kind of jumped in there. I'm naive that way in a lot of things that I take on. I go, oh, that'll be easy. I'll just jump in there and do that. I can do that. And then, 16, 17 years later, we're still, cranking it out. So it is a little bit humbling when you think of it that way, because the beginnings were very, very humble.
Yeah, for sure. And I know I know your story of how you got started, but for our listeners, I'd like you to share, because every hero has their origin story, which kind of put them on that path to doing heroic work. So I'd really like for you to share, what was that initial spark that got you started down the path of Spirit Radio? So we'll dive into, kind of how, when you were younger and how you started there, but the spark for getting Spirit Radio started, what really led to that for you?
Yeah. So, radio works differently in Europe than it does in the States. And in Ireland, particularly, it's government. So you have to apply to the government for a license. And there was no Christian radio broadcasting license in Ireland. And so around the 1970s, some people took up that challenge to petition the government. And it took about 30 years for the government to finally say, okay, well, we'll put out this license and to tender, and people can apply for it. So the way I got involved, somebody knew that I had a degree in radio and thought that would look good on the application. And because a lot of the people involved in the project didn't have radio experience. There were a few of us that did, but a good few didn't. So I kind of thought, oh yeah, okay. They said that it'd be about a 6-month commitment. I said, sure, I can do this for 6 months. So I came on to the original board, and we started the process. But little did we know, there was a lot of obstacles that were going to come up over that time that we were trying to get on air. So it went to tender anyway, and 5 different groups applied for the license, and we were very fortunate to win the license. And everything was set to go. We were so excited. We were ready to go. We just had to start putting things into place. And I don't know if people are aware, but back at that time, there was a very big economy, big social boom happening in Ireland, and it was called the Celtic Tiger. And just as soon as we were granted the license, the Celtic Tiger crashed and died, and everybody lost so much of their money. Their financial situations changed overnight in Ireland. And so all that money that had been pledged to get the station on air, most of it disappeared literally overnight. And we were devastated, because you can't start a project like this without the funding. So we actually had to go back to square one and re-raise all of that money. And that took a couple of years, but we finally did it. We got on air, and we've been on air over 10 years now. So.
Wow, that's incredible, because it's very interesting to me, because I was in a similar situation to you, where I was brought into a startup company just because I had certain experience that the other 3 partners didn't have. And you were, hey, she's got a radio degree. Let's bring her on. And then here you are, all these years later. You're one of the co-founders. You're on the board. You're still there working on it to join your radio show. And did you think that when you were getting it started, did you think that you would be there 17 years later?
Absolutely not. I didn't think I'd be there 6 months later, let alone 17 years later. And, when I started the project, when I started onto the board, I didn't even know if I would be on air. That hadn't been said. It hadn't been promised. It wasn't part of the deal. I was just coming on to give my opinions and to be on the board. And when we went on air, I was asked to come on a Saturday show. I have 7 kids. So at the time I didn't have 7 children. I had about, I kind of, the project of Spirit Radio, I kind of think about it as to who I was pregnant with at that time.
Yeah. When you have 7, you kind of have to do that, right? They're gauging time.
So Christopher was the baby I was expecting when we won the license, and we didn't actually get on air until after Matthew, his brother, was born a few years later. So, yeah. So, it was just a wonder. it is such a wonderful project, and it has had such an impact on Ireland, and just it's brought so many issues to the current affairs table that wouldn't have been there if Spirit Radio hadn't been there. When I started, I didn't actually start on Saturday Magazine, which is a talk show. I actually started on Saturday afternoon, and then with a music show. I had a 3-hour music show, and I tried to bring that element of social issues and health issues, and I tried to bring that to that 3-hour show. And after a few years, the person who had Saturday Magazine was moving on to a different position. And so they offered the job to me, and I was dying to take it. And I've had it for, I don't even know how many years I've actually done the show. I think probably 7 years or more. And I have just enjoyed every single year. It's like, if you do what you love, you never work a day in your life. And that's how I look at Spirit Radio, my involvement there. I really, really enjoy the project. I enjoy what it gives to the country of Ireland, and the lift that it gives to charities and the Christian message and the gospel and all the things that it brings to people. And it's a fantastic project to be involved with.
Yeah, and I would say that that's definitely a sign that you're doing what you love, when you kind of lose track of the time. You lose track. Yeah. 7, 6, I don't know, whatever it is. Whenever it started, because it shows that you're doing God's work, and I would say I know, Jesus is a big part of what you do. I know it's one of the key objectives for Spirit Radio is to help people discover the Word of God and bring Jesus back into the conversation for people. So looking back now, it's a lot easier to connect the dots looking backwards, but looking back now, do you feel that God had a hand in, because you didn't think you were going to be there 6 months. So do you think that God had a hand in what was going on, and you staying and you getting on your show and everything?
Absolutely. Like, we kind of have a saying that at Spirit Radio, that work as it all depends on you, but trust as it all depends on God. Like, I love that. Yeah, and it is his project in the end. And I've often said that. I've often saw it that way. Even from the beginning, I kind of saw it as, his baby that we were being entrusted to help nurture and grow. And I think we've done that. I think we've managed to do that with Spirit Radio. It started off very small, and it's growing. It's still not exactly where I would hope it to be. I would love to see it grow even more and get bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think it will over time. I think we will get there. But it's just, the thing that impresses me the most about the work there is the people who get in touch, the listeners. Are very vocal, and it's wonderful to hear from them. They text in, they write letters, they sing cards, and their testimonials are really what I think keep everybody so energized and charged that work with Spirit Radio. Because you get people that, you might get an elderly person that calls in, and I remember I had a text once from an elderly woman who was doing her ironing on a Saturday morning, and she said, my husband passed away over a year ago, and I turn you on every day and listen to Spirit Radio, and you keep me company. And, that brought tears to my eyes when I read that text, and I've never forgotten her. And you get messages from people who were on the brink of suicide, really in the pit of despair, and something happened. God intervened. Somehow they heard Spirit Radio. Maybe they turned on something in their home, the radio in their home or their computer or the app, or they were in the car and turned on the radio, and they heard a song with a certain lyric, or they heard a presenter giving some encouragement and positivity and good news, and it just encouraged them in that moment that they were feeling despair, and gave them that little bit of hope that they needed to realize, I need to go talk to someone. So it's wonderful when people reach out like that with those kinds of stories and those kinds of messages. It really makes it so worthwhile to be involved in a project like this.
Yeah, those are what a friend of mine calls, you're getting those high fives from God. That's where God is giving you a high five and telling you that you're on the right path. And I know that I was fortunate enough when I was on your show to be a part of one of those text messages that came into the station. I remember you were good enough to share that message with me after I had been on the Saturday morning show, early 5 a.m. my time, and on a Saturday morning, and had shared about iSpark Change the first time and what our mission was and my book. And that young mother that, just like you said, she was one of those on the brink of suicide, thinking that she didn't, her family didn't need her any longer. And that, after hearing me and others on your show that morning, that she was inspired and that she had prayed for purpose. And that's exactly what I was talking about, was purpose. And that she felt God had given her a purpose as a mother. And that just shows me that it's such clear evidence that God is working constantly behind the scenes, whether we realize it or not. And we get those high fives from him, and he shows us. And that's something, honestly, Jacki, that when I started down my path with iSpark Change a couple of years ago, and we've talked about this on your show, I felt that that's what God was calling me to do. So I said, okay, I'm going to obey. I'm going to do it till the day I die. This is what I'm working on. If I have to do it alone, I'll do it alone, that thing. And I said, not really a but I was like, what would be great is if every now and again you give me a little sign that I'm on the right path. You show me that I'm doing what I should be doing, right? That I'm doing your will. And those are the kind of things that come along every now and again. And I'm sure, you were just sharing how they come along for you that show you, okay, this is the impact I'm having. This is, those are your, we call them spark moments for iSpark Change. Those spark moments that have a ripple effect that impact someone and change the trajectory of someone's life. And it's interesting you share that, but I usually, that's one of the last things I ask people on this podcast is, talk about a spark moment. And I bet you have a lot of spark moments of times where you've impacted people or changed the trajectory on their life. And, maybe sometimes and maybe sometimes you don't, but
I'd say most of the time you probably don't know. That's the thing that it in a way is kind of beautiful, because for every person that you hear from, there's got to be so many that don't reach out and give that text or that email or get connected in some way to tell you the impact. And in a way that's really beautiful, because it means that you're making the impact and people are just, they just keep going. And that's what you want. It's nice to get those little nuggets every now and then to know that there are actually people that it's happening for. But it's encouraging because that there's, so many more that it's happening for as well. And you're never going to hear about it.
Yeah. And I think that really speaks to faith. That really speaks to our faith to trust and have faith that we're doing what God wants us to do, and that it is having the impact in the right way, that is falling on those ears in the right way and touching people. And I think that's really a big part of that is being open to God. And I know I've heard you say and read you have a passion for Jesus and you love spreading the good news. So I am curious though, how has your faith grown over the years? Has it always been really strong from the time you were, a young child, or how has it grown? Because, I can tell you have a strong faith now, but how has it evolved over the years?
Well, that's a very interesting question. So I grew up in Texas, and I grew up in a family where it was just my mom and my dad and myself. I'm my mom and dad's only child. So it was just the three of us. And neither one of my parents had a very strong faith. But my grandparents, my dad's parents, had a very strong faith. They were Southern Baptist, and I grew up Southern Baptist. And I was baptized when I was 12, 13, 14, around in there. I can't really remember exactly how old I was, but it was between 12 to 14. I made the decision to be baptized. And I always kind of felt that the Holy Spirit was with me. I always knew that there was something with me, some entity with me. I just couldn't quite explain what it was, but it was very comforting. And as I started to understand my faith better and to kind of grow in that faith, I came to understand that was the Holy Spirit. So, and like most people, I grew over the years in that relationship with God, but then I had a time, particularly in my late teens, early 20s, when I walked away from it. Yep. And I just felt like it was, I don't know, I felt like I was searching for something that I wasn't quite finding. It just wasn't quite landing with me the way it had when I was younger. And I started
totally relate.
Yeah. And so when I was in my mid-20s, it's so interesting how God works, because he was putting people in my life that I didn't even realize the impact they were going to have. So I was working with and becoming very close friends with a woman who became like a sister to me over the years, and she was Catholic. And I didn't even know she was Catholic, but I knew there was something about her that I was really drawn to. And then I met my husband. And of course, at the time I didn't know he was going to be my husband. But again, there was something about him that really drew me to him. And it was his moral compass. I was just so intrigued by his character. He had a really strong, upright, honest character. And the way he spoke about his faith and his family and his life, it was really impactful for me. So I took myself off at 25 to the local Catholic church in Houston, Texas, and knocked on the door of the priest. And I said, I want to know more about this Catholicism that I'm hearing about, that my friends are talking about. And the priest was amazing. He sat me down and had a good chat with me. And my timing was impeccable. Again, God brought me there right at the right time. And they were starting their RCIA classes in a few weeks. And he said, you should just come along and sit in and see what you think. Maybe you'll be intrigued, maybe you won't, but maybe it'll answer some questions for you. And it was amazing to me. It was just that experience week on week. I just felt like, oh, wow. I just felt like the fullness of the truth was being explained to me for the first time ever. And as I learned more, I grew more in love with God, and I started moving into a relationship with him again. And, one thing led to another. And as I started to understand the Catholic faith, I just really felt like this was what I'd been searching for. This was the fullness of the truth. This was where I felt really comfortable. And I knew that I'd found my home. And I came into the church that Easter and never looked back. I really felt like had come into a full relationship with God. And it's just grown from there, and over the years, it's just been such an amazing experience, I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a mom. And there's nothing like that to teach you just how humble you really are. It's like all your faults, like as you parent, you're parenting toddlers, you start to see some of your flaws because they start to imitate you and you go, oh my gosh, I think I know where they got that. Yes. And then they grow into their teen years, and that is really humbling. and then they become adults, and then they can actually converse with you on an adult level, and you can have these deep conversations and spiritual growth through your family and your family relationships. So it's just been an amazing journey. I think I've always had God close. I've always felt like God's been close by to me, that he's always, he was interested in me, and I could feel it from a young age. I could feel his call in my heart. I didn't exactly know what that call was, but I think eventually what it led me to was my Catholic faith and where I am today.
That's so beautiful, Jacki. I mean, I'm very grateful, and thank you for sharing all that, because I think the journey of one's faith is a fascinating thing to hear from anyone, especially someone that has, there's there's so many different paths that lead to God, and pretty much all paths if you allow it. But to hear what your journey was, and and it's part of your hero's journey. It's part of who's made you the impactful person that you are. The impact hero that you are. A big part of that is your faith. I see that as maybe the most important part, maybe the driving factor of who you are, that being your faith. And yes, it takes on different roles, like a mother, or a radio personality on Christian radio station, or whatever it takes. But at the underlying core, it's God and your faith, and the strength of that. And just hearing you share that, I mean, yeah, it's really beautiful, and I feel blessed that you shared that with me, and especially the part, because I can totally relate, the part of being a parent. And oftentimes, I know for myself, sure, you think about the mistakes you made, or you think, oh man, I wish they didn't have that trait of mine. I wish my daughter didn't have my stubbornness, or I wish this, or I wish that. Yeah. And so while I have thought those things, I haven't necessarily related that to my faith. Those type of aspects. Yes, I've related, hey, they've gotten some of their faith. I feel the driving force from my faith was my parents, especially my father, and they solidified my faith when I was younger. So that was what it was for me. But for my kids, I think more about the decisions we made, how we raised them, all of that. But relating it to part of my faith journey, I hadn't really done that before. And I think it's such a crucial aspect of who we are as parents. And so that's an enlightening place for me to see. So thank you.
Yeah. I mean, it is, the kids are probably what drive me in my journey with God, because, you are out front as the parent, and you are responsible, I'm whatever about everything else. My main responsibility, my primary vocation is as a wife and mother. And so my job is to get my husband and my kids to heaven, and that's my husband's job as well. So we're working for each other. And it is a driving force, and it means that there are a lot of sacrifices. I would love to be on Spirit Monday through Friday. I would love to have a talk show. I'd love to be more involved. I'd love to be more hands-on. But, part of the sacrifice and the humility that comes with, that's not my primary vocation. This is something that I do on a Saturday morning. That's my contribution, because my main contribution then has to be to the family, because that's where God has me right now. And, and you can let that be frustrating because you want to be more involved in work, or you can say, you know what? I have my priorities. I can't do everything. I have to set my priorities and keep things in order, and move forward and be happy about that. Bring the happiness, and not be going, oh, the frustration. Instead, look at it the positive way and realize that this is my primary vocation, and those kids are the primary part of my life, for sure.
Yeah, and what I hear is that when you are clear in that faith, then God helps set those boundaries for you. God helps give you those dividing lines. He helps you to see that, okay, this is where, yes, I can be on a Saturday morning show instead of every day and still impact lives. And I can participate in my children's activities during the week. And so those boundaries are set, those lines are laid out, and it doesn't become a struggle. You don't feel pulled in one direction versus the other. I mean, at least the way I think of it is, they're softer tugs. It's not like, no, I should be over here, or no, I should be over here. It's okay. No, I'm doing everything that I feel I should do, and that I'm in a really good place. And so that's what I feel from you, is that you're in a great place with your faith. You're in a great place with your family, great place with your work and what you're passionate about. And that there's no doubt in my mind that comes from God. That comes from your faith.
God is good. He really is. Yeah. I mean, yeah, he is so faithful and so good. When we give him a little, he gives back so much more. You know, it's amazing.
Yeah. And that's one of the secrets. I mean, that's what I've found is one of the secrets really to life that I've seen in my work, is that the more I give, the more I get back. You know, it's just kind of sounds cliche, right? It's the more you give, the more you receive. And in the past few years, I feel I've given more than probably I ever had in my life. And I've gotten more than I ever had in my life. And I've met amazing people like you and been able to connect with people from all over the world. And iSpark Change is growing, and everything is going, you know, according to God's will. And I part of why we spotlight people like you is so more people can come to that realization. More people can believe that and start embodying it and start living it on a daily basis. So what advice would you give to the person that is struggling to get to that place, that is struggling to find their purpose, or struggling with faith, or they're kind of struggling with that, you know, that place that maybe you were when you were 25? What advice would you give to that person?
Well, there's two things that pop into my head. The one thing that pops into my head, and I say this to an awful lot, I say this to people that that I'm chatting with about, you know, when they're trying to have spiritual growth, when they're trying to get some traction in their life with what their vocation, whatever that may be. And that is to try to always have a spiritual director in your life. I have had a spiritual director now for over 27 years, and it's been different people. It's been different. I usually go to priests, but they've been different people over the years that I've gone to for spiritual direction. But that was a game changer for me. Because I think, you know, when you're trying to grow in your faith, sometimes it feels like you got thrown into the deep end and you're just kind of treading water and you don't really know what direction you're going into. And spiritual direction is kind of like that life float that you can kind of grab onto and kind of get some direction and get some traction in your life. You know, I've found over the years that, you know, particularly when I as a person feel like I'm starting to maybe stagnate a bit or kind of come apart at the seams a bit, and like, oh, I don't feel like I've got it on. Maybe I'm not on the right track. Maybe I'm off a bit. Maybe I've taken a detour and I need to get back on the main road. I find going to spiritual direction and chatting through those issues and having somebody hold me accountable to, are you praying? Are you receiving the sacraments? Are you making a holy hour? Are you getting confession regularly? And that's the other thing. Confession is really central, I think, to growth in our spiritual life, because it's humbling. You know, it's humbling to go in and have that discussion of, this is where I'm failing. This is where I'm not hitting the mark. This is where I need to grow. This is where I'm tripping. And to have that humility, to be able to go to confession and realize that you're not just meeting the priest there, you're meeting Jesus. You're meeting Jesus through the priest. And you can, that's where you get real growth, I think, in your life, is when you go to God and you say, look, this is where I'm at, and this is where I need you, and this is where I failed, and this is where I need your light to shine through me in a better way. Help me to do that. And another thing that I think is really important in life, that's been important for me anyway, is, you know, God can always use our yes. You know, it's really easy to say no to things, and we shouldn't say yes to everything. We have to be discerning what we say yes to. But I've always found personally for me that, you know, my small yes to something, God can often take that, what I think is a small yes, and do so much with it. And I think of Holy Mary. I think of Our Lady. You know, her yes, her fiat, her yes to God, to being the mother of Jesus, and what God did with that. And, you know, so like when it came time, when somebody came knocking on my door and said, would you give 6 months to Spirit Radio to this project? It probably would have been easier to say, no, I'm sorry, I don't have time. I'm pregnant. I'm expecting a baby. I've got 4 more at home. I don't have time because I didn't have time. I didn't. But I thought, I really felt pressed on my heart to say yes. And so I did say yes. And that yes, grew into something really, really big that I could have never imagined could have had so much fruit and flowered so beautifully over the years. So while we can't say yes to everything, it's important to discern what we should say yes to. And I think spiritual direction helps with that as well, to have somebody in your life that you can go to and say, I feel like God's asking me to do this. And then somebody can say to you, well, yeah, maybe you should, or you know what's your primary vocation? And maybe you should say no this time, so.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. And that's excellent advice. And I would add for our listeners, because we have listeners from multiple countries and listeners of all faiths, that for some, it's going to be a spiritual director. For some, it's going to be a mentor. For some, it's going to be a confidant or advisor or counselor or therapist. But it's getting that guidance from someone that you trust, someone that has been on that journey, maybe a little farther than you have, and can help guide you and give you some wisdom. Maybe they have a little wisdom. And, I personally like the spiritual type, but, for some, I know listening, it may be the spiritual type. It may be someone that's more of a mentor for them along their journey. But that guide,
sometimes it's a teacher. Sometimes it's a grandparent. Sometimes it's an aunt or an uncle. Sometimes it's a friend. I think it's just it's just so important to have those people in our lives that we go to, that we don't feel like we have to figure it all out on our own, that we have somebody that we can trust and go to and get advice from when we need it. It's really pivotal. We weren't meant to live in isolation. I think as human beings, we're meant to commune with one another and to commune with God. And so that's when we're happiest, when we start shutting people out, that's where you see people starting to get depressed and starting to feel despair and losing that bit of hope. I think we really need people. I think that's maybe what's been so hard about the last couple of years globally, like with COVID and all that's happened in the last couple of years, and people got very isolated because we were restricted in our movements and where we could go and what we could do and who we could see. And I think that was very damaging for a lot of people. And that's going to take time, for people to heal from and to come back from, because we're not meant to live like that. We're meant to live with others and to be in relationship with others.
Yeah, and human beings are a social tribe species, and that's been important for our success going back thousands of years, going back for us being alive, going way back to when we had to be part of a tribe to survive the elements and predators and all that stuff, and now it's more a factor of our emotions and our physical wellness and our spiritual wellness and our mental wellness being having that tribe to be a part of. And I think one thing that's important in all those people you mentioned, right? The spiritual director, the teacher, the coach, the grandparent, all of those, is that, like you said, it's important to go to God and to have God give you that guidance. Is that those are people that aren't going to judge you. They're going to accept you for who you are. They're going to accept you where you are and with all your flaws, the way that God does. He accepts us with all our flaws and with all our imperfections, and knows that we are going to sin again, and knows that we're going to mess up, and is still there. And those are the type of people that to have in your life, that it doesn't matter what mess you've made, they're going to be there to help you through it and to help, hold your hand through the journey. And and that's part of being that impact hero, is that you can be that person for, not just for, like in your case, not just for thousands or millions on the radio, but you can be that person for one individual, one person that's suffering, one person that is having a hard time, one person that is isolated, one person that has lost their way. And that's where, for anybody listening, today you can be that person for someone, and you can make a spark moment that's going to make a difference in their life moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing about radio that is so amazing, or even like podcasts are getting really popular now, which kind of does the same thing. You just don't know who you're talking to. You don't know who's going to come across what you've got to say, and they're going to come across it at that moment when they really, really need it. Like that's what I love about radio. It's so intimate because like I go into a studio and I sit in a booth and I feel alone. I really like nobody could be listening. I don't know, fortunately there are people listening, but you just don't know. It feels like no one is. And, but the receiver also feels that way. They're into, maybe you're in their ears or you're in their car or you're in their kitchen. It's intimate and it's that space that you can get into with somebody. And I think that's what's so impactful about something like radio, particularly Christian radio, is that it's meeting people where they have their need. It's meeting people where, maybe they feel too vulnerable with somebody that was face to face, but because it's just in their ears or in their space that they're hearing, they don't feel so threatened by it. So they'll engage more with it. And it can be really impactful on people.
Yeah, it's a way to open that door for themselves, right? Yeah. Whether it's to open the door to God, whether it's to open the door to speak to someone else or open their heart a little bit. It's just that opening, it's that way of it kind of plants the seed. And you talked about it earlier when you said about saying yes. It's that seed that you start to nurture and to water and that can, grow and flourish into something incredible. And, radio, podcast, different types of media, when it's impactful in a positive way, can be that spark that, that seed that starts growing and, takes someone to a better place. So share with us, because I remember reading in your bio that music and media were a passion from an early age. So I'm wondering what started that? How did those become a passion? Because even getting out of college, you started at a radio station, in Cleveland, Texas. You started as on a show, but how did that start at such an early age?
I don't know. I suppose there was always a bit of a performer in me. Like I love to tell a story. I love to have my parents' attention, and I would tell all kinds of stories, and I would get really excited about that. I love to communicate. And so when I was in high school, I had a mentor. She was my English teacher, and I'm still close with her today. But nice. She was my teacher in high school, sophomore English teacher. And she one day took me aside and said, "Have you ever thought of like you have a gift for speaking and talking and communicating?" She said, I want you to use that gift. She says, she signed me up in persuasive extemporaneous speaking for UIL competitions. And, I think that's where it started, to be honest. I got a love of, it was kind of an adrenaline rush to go into a competition and to have to think on my feet and to have to pull thoughts and figures and facts together and persuade a team of judges on a viewpoint that I was trying to persuade them on. So I think that's probably where I got the bug for communicating. So when I went off to college, I decided I actually started majoring in communications, and I changed colleges. And when I changed colleges my sophomore year, I was going to Hardin-Simmons University out in Abilene, Texas, and I transferred to the University of North Texas in Denton, and they had an amazing radio, TV, and film department there. So I changed my major to radio, television, and film. And I minored in business. And my passion in college when I was in radio class, TV class, film class, was to one day, I really wanted to work in a Christian, I thought maybe TV station, or I was more drawn to TV. I thought TV would be what I would go into. But when I came out of college, the first job I got was at a country radio station in my hometown of Cleveland, Texas. And I was the music director. When you're at a small station, you do everything. I was the music director. I was the midday air personality. I swept the floor. I made the coffee. I cleaned the bathroom. I mean, you did everything. There weren't too many people there, so you did everything. And sometimes even sales calls. So. And I think that's where my love of radio started to percolate. I really enjoyed that job an awful lot. And when the opportunity came to do Spirit Radio, it was funny because, many years passed. I had that first job out of college, and then I went on to do other things. I worked in advertising. I worked as a media spokesperson. I became a wife and a mother, and I didn't work for a few years. And then I kind of got slowly drawn into Spirit Radio. And it wasn't until a couple of years into the project of Spirit that God reminded me of that desire that I had back when I was a sophomore and junior in college. I was just like, one day it hit me. I was like, oh my gosh, this was actually my dream at one stage. This is what I was hoping to do one day. And here I am doing it. Like, I didn't even, it's funny because I didn't pursue it that way thinking, oh, this is my dream. This is what I always wanted to do. It just kind of happened. And then I was reminded, that this is what I wanted to be doing. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's yet another example of just, God working behind the scenes. And, sometimes it takes time. We're all on that journey, or you're on that hero's journey, and it takes time to get there. And we're still kind of always on that journey, but he's connecting those dots. He's making it all happen. He's laying the foundations that are going to, grow much later. And I'd say this, Jacki, this has been an incredible chat together. And I'd say that you've probably mentioned more spark moments than anyone of any interview I've done, because I could throw that priest that you spoke to that first time when you said, hey, I want to learn about Catholicism. That could be a spark moment that literally changed the trajectory of your life. Or your teacher that decided to put you in UIL, or there's probably a dozen other people, or the people that you've impacted, right? Or the person that asked you to, hey, come be on the board at Spirit Radio. I mean, there's so many that I won't ask you to share another one, because I'm sure the list is long of the spark moments that have, but I think that's a great example for our listeners, is that you never know when that spark moment is going to come. You never know when that one conversation, that one phone call, that one thing you read, that one thing you hear or think about, that one person you meet is going to be a life changer. And as I've been on this journey, I've had more and more and more and more of those. It seems like or at least I'm more aware of them, but they seem to come more and more often. And, I think that's a product of what you talked about earlier. That's a product of your faith, and a product of being close with God, is that he's probably dropping those in because he knows you're going to put in the work, and you're going to make them, grow. And you're not just going to let them die, that you're going to do something with, those sparks that he's putting out there. And so I'd encourage our listeners and viewers to take control when God's giving you those spark moments, and do something with them. So as I said, Jacki, this has been an incredible time. How can people, obviously you're in Ireland, but I didn't even share that at the top of the show, but you're in Ireland, but can people listen online to Spirit Radio, or how can they hear Saturday Magazine? If they're up on a Saturday morning, how can they hear more about what you're doing?
So if you're not in Ireland, you can tune into the radio. It's a national station, so we have a reach pretty much all over Ireland. But you can find us. We have an app. We have a Spirit Radio app. And so a lot of people around the globe download the app. Also, people listen online at spiritradio.ie. We have people joining us there. And it's wonderful because you can actually see what countries people are listening from. And we have people globally listening that tune in from time to time. So it's great to be able to have people from all over the world join in and be a part of the station.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I know I've listened myself online at the website, that I have listened myself. I will have to download the app, because there's not always great Christian radio where I live. It seems like they play the same songs over and over again. So you got a lot more variety when I've listened. There's a lot more variety, but I like the global nature of your work, because our goal at iSpark Change is to impact 1 billion people in the next 5 years through our community and our work. And we know we can't do this alone. So that's why we need the help of impact heroes and leaders like you that are showing others the way, that are making people helping people on their faith journey, helping people believe that they can make a difference, and empowering them to be better and improve. Because I know there's a lot of people that felt, as we talked about at the very beginning of the show, that, hey, I'm just one person. Like, how can I make a difference? How can I impact the world? And, you do it on a daily basis, and anyone can, like we talked about it. So as a social impact hero, I value your thoughts and your opinion. And so I'm going to ask you to peer into our iSpark Change crystal ball and tell me, what can the world become if everyone starts believing and having the faith to believe that they can positively impact the future and change the world?
Well, the first thing that pops into my mind when you say that is St. Catherine of Siena, and what she said, that be who God meant you to be and you'll set the world on fire. And that's a very inspiring, she's an inspiring person to me. And that's what I would encourage people to do. Just be who you are, be yourself, be your authentic self. And that will inspire people, and it will set the world on fire.
Well, very eloquently said. Thank you very much, Jacki, for sharing that. Thank you for everything that you've shared today, and for opening your heart to our audience. It's been truly an honor and a blessing to have you on the show. An
honor for me as well. Thank you.
All right, Impact Heroes, we know you've enjoyed that. And thank you, Jacki, again, for taking your time to share your heart and wisdom with our audience. It's our stories that connect us all. We love hearing your story. We love hearing about all those spark moments in your life. And, Jacki Ascough, you truly are an iSpark Change social impact hero.
Remember, Impact Heroes, every positive action can be a spark moment that has a ripple effect that spreads far beyond the initial act. So go out there and spark change. Don't forget, if you enjoyed this episode, then please smash that 5-star rating on iTunes or Spotify and leave a review. We value your comments, and we want to hear from you in the community. Thank you for listening. God bless you, and we'll see you next week on the iSpark Change podcast.